We are on the lunch break of the fourth and final day of questioning of Bob Lambert. We have finally concluded the questioning of Bob Lambert. Over the last session, he was questioned extensively about his failure to investigate or try and contact in any way his son, who he had with Jackie, TBS. This is despite the fact that he was aware that he had a hereditary medical condition, which would have been very pertinent for TBS to know. I'm joined by Dave Morris, regular of this parish. What did you make of what Bob Lambert had to say?
Well, the whole day, and of course his whole evidence is utterly shocking. This is the top guy, basically, in terms of the guy that really developed the most obnoxious tactics employed by routinely employed by this secret unit, and at the same time made sure it was all covered up. I mean, obviously he's just a pawn in a much bigger, machine, basically, to mix my metaphors. But basically, he's carrying out the work of the state to monitor and undermine dissent. But he really sums up the entire public inquiry, in my opinion. He's utterly prepared to do anything to protect the unit and the Metropolitan Police. Even in this inquiry, he's determined to lie continuously, which is a combination of pretending he doesn't remember, delaying tactics, and out-and-out lies. However, when faced with the incontrovertible documentation that was showed to him today and in previous days and in last time he attended, he has to basically accept that the tactics that he employed and the cover-up that was implemented, he has to recognize. Yes, he's at the very end, he was challenged about this fake document, which was clearly written to cover up the fact that one of the undercover officers had a sexual relationship and was living with one of the members of a target group for years.
Just to recap, that was in relation to Mark Jenner, the undercover police officer who was deceiving a woman we're calling Alison into a long-term sexual relationship, which he was cohabiting with her. Yesterday, John Mitting intervened in the process, which is very unusual, and asked Lambert to reflect on the answers he'd given so far, to reminded him of the importance of the truth, and said he would be asking him again about it today. He did so, as you say, at the end. And I mean, Lambert's response, I think it's fair to say that Mitting was not satisfied with what he had to say.
Not at all. He clearly couldn't lie about it anymore. He was really on the spot, and basically he said, well, I was negligent, which is absolute bollocks, because this was a deliberately, intelligently crafted document.
Very detailed.
Very detailed. It was nothing to do with being negligent. It was a deliberate, false documentation created to cover up the fact which Lambert has claimed he knew nothing about, the sexual relationship between Jenner and Alison. And of course that applied to all the relationships. He moving on to his extensive work to cover up, to prevent Helen Steele from tracking down her ex-partner John Dines, undercover police officer. And in fact, this went on for about 10 years, this cover-up, more than 10 years. Lambert was heavily involved for the first 7 or 8 years of that cover up.
About 12, I think it works out.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was involved all the way through because it turns out that after he left the SDS, people were still calling him up and he was still communicating with SDS management about key issues.
He continued to be this fixer character, essentially.
Yes, and basically he claimed he is the only person in the entire universe who didn't know that Helen Steele had a relationship with John Dines.
In fact, he claims he didn't know until it became public knowledge.
Yes, bollocks. It's bollocks.
I mean, it's such a ridiculous lie, given the huge amount of time and resources and effort that was put into.
And he had continuous conversations over, a decade with his personal friend John Dines about all aspects of why she was trying to track him down and what to do about it. Anyway, so.
Also, Jim Boyling says that in 2000, that Lambert told him the only reason that he knew about Dines' relationship, someone who he hadn't served alongside, was because Lambert told him.
Yes. So, this, to me, in some ways, this was almost like the most important day in the inquiry, because really he personifies the utterly despicable activities and tactics used by the SDS. He himself fathered a child from one of his 4 relationships with women. He took part centrally in a major criminal enterprise, resulted in burning down of a Debenhams store, and they've got other people arrested and sentenced for that, and many other crimes that he and the SDS committed in furtherance, basically, of trying to undermine dissent in this country, and perfectly legitimate dissent. 1,000 groups were targeted over a 40-year period by this unit, and almost all of them were groups with major popularity and support amongst the population, trade unions, anti-war, environmental groups, animal welfare, animal rights groups, and so on. So, but not only did he represent this unit and what it existed for, but and the shocking tactics that they employed, which are totally unacceptable, but also the huge effort to cover everything up, which as he has accepted, was the number one always the number one priority, was to cover up anything which could reveal the existence of this secret unit to the public. Now, this is really important in terms of the most dangerous time for him was the 1990s, when he was manager. Helen Steele was tracking down John Dines in the middle of the McLible case, which me and Helen were fighting against McDonald's, which was the longest case in English history. And a key fundamental part of that case was who was involved with the campaign against McDonald's, involved in the distribution of the leaflets that McDonald's had objected to, which was going to be dealt with at the end of the trial. We had already forced McDonald's to hand over all the paperwork to do with their infiltration of London Greenpeace, and we called all of those McDonald's spies to give evidence during the case, at the end of the case indeed. The person who had coordinated that infiltration of London Creepies by McDonald's, Sid Nicholson, was in court every day throughout this long case. He was a former chief superintendent of Brixton Police Station in the early 1980s, when Bob Lambert was active in the area on behalf of the Special Branch, and quite a few other SDS management seem to have been connected to this police station. But if Dines had been tracked down, Dines, who had been involved with the campaign against McDonald's, and we have recently found out was quote unquote deliberately omitted from the McLibel writ by McDonald's, that could only have been in collaboration with the SDS and the Metropolitan Police, and documents that were shown to Lambert today. Finally, and we've been pushing for this for years, finally was shown documents which basically said they were terrified that that Helen Steele would uncover, challenge Dines during the McLibel case, because this would have been a huge legal scandal. I think the McLibel trial would have collapsed. The SDS would have had global publicity, because we were getting global publicity during that case. You know, entirely positive publicity as far as we were concerned. It was, you know, everybody was, supporting our efforts to challenge McDonald's attempt to silence their critics. So this was really the biggest moment of jeopardy for the SDS and indeed the Metropolitan Police. And the courts were misled at every level by under their own admission. Lambert and the SDS and the Metropolitan Police, to the highest levels, it seems, include in the documents shown today and other ones which I've seen, which will no doubt be published now. The cover up to prevent Helen Steele finding John Dines went to the very top. It was authorised at the very top. And not only was there a cover up, but millions of pounds of public funds were spent relocating John Dines, buying him a new house, paying him lost wages, officers, senior management flying regularly to Australia and New Zealand to meet with Dines, to meet with the police in New Zealand and Australia. So basically the SDS, the cancerous corruption to protect the SDS was being spread across the world, and they were involving other police forces. One of the documents, which wasn't shown but will be released, I'm sure, was they were also worried that Helen, not just that we would take action in the McLibel case, but we would take action in New Zealand. Helen, who had family in New Zealand, might be trying to get Dines subpoenaed by the New Zealand courts. So this was really high level jeopardy stuff that just had to be covered up at every level. And they lied to the courts during the trial, during the appeal, and at the European Court level, which we won our European Court case, but a fundamental issue which was the publication of the leaflet and whether we should have been sued anyway. Yeah, so, well, I'm very relieved that this has all finally come out.
I mean, one of the things that one of the details in that is that you know, that in some of the paperwork, Lambert says that at the time, Lambert said he was concerned that you yourself were about to reveal the infiltrators
Yes.
in London Greenpeace from McDonald's, and he says that the only person who had in-depth knowledge of that was John Dines.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's come up in previous tranches of the inquiry that the collaboration is absolutely clear, collusion between McDonald's and the SDS, but the kind of trail goes kind of vague and weak as the trial, you know, gets underway. Like who was colluding and how did they collude, and there's kind of hints at it, but Lambert is doing his best to cover it all up. So yes, I mean, at the same time, obviously, I was going to say something about Helen's search, for Dines,
which is ultimately successful. She does
confront him, and she basically says, you know, why did you do all this? You know, oh yeah, they're lying about it, 100% lying about it. Like Lambert admitted today, under serious questioning, it was likely that she had a relationship with Dines, a sexual relationship. Having said, oh no, nobody knew anything about it, it's supposedly for you know, decades. Under severe questioning, he said, oh well, it was likely. None of the documents that he was circulating to all these police forces, and no doubt to, you know, to the commissioner of the police, to justify the expenditure on this whole operation to prevent Helen finding Dines. None of them mentioned that likely scenario.
Strangely enough.
They said, oh, why is she trying to track him down? Well, it may be because, you know, she's a fanatic ALF activist who wants to cause him harm, you know, or you know, I think there are various scenarios suggested. They try and make it look as, you know, as risky as possible. But the real reason is completely suppressed. And I think the inquiry have now got that completely. Yeah, and the public funds that was spent on this, millions, we should be demanding that back, and that could be put to greater use.
Quite, yeah. I mean, I think despite his constant, I don't recall, and denials about all these things, I think Barr did a particularly good job today in cornering him on numerous topics. Up until today, we've seen a lot of smirks and smiles from Lambert. They weren't present today at all.
No, I think the documentation, you know, gradually the core participants have forced the inquiry to find. A lot of them in the original tranches emanate from the security services, because the Metropolitan Police had destroyed lots of documents, relevant documents. However, the security services seem to keep everything forever on everybody, you know. So I think they're a big part of it, the security services. And it's the documentation really that is utterly destroying the Metropolitan Police's case throughout this inquiry. I mean, I noticed in their most recent statement, the Metropolitan Police have already made a whole range of apologies for all kinds of things, which I won't go into, which we've mentioned many times. And of course, the inquiry has already ruled that the unit should have been closed down in the early 70s because of how obnoxious it was then, and it only got worse after that. But the documentation that's still coming out it's a revelation, basically, and it can't. There's no argument against it. This is their own documents, so and you know they don't really care what we think. You know, probably the inquiry doesn't really care what we think, but what they do care about is police documents. and the truth is now out. Can't be put back in the bag.
No, absolutely. Just to recap the last little bit, there was further questions for Lambert and the Rule 10 system, where the rest of us get to input into what's asked of him. There was very little there, really. A couple of questions. I mean, the important thing I think of the last session really was just the callousness with which he treated his own child. The way in which he failed, though it was as he said, he was free to contact TBS anytime he liked.
And TBS's mother,
Jackie, yeah, he did neither. I mean, the only time he waited until the story was in the Guardian, and then she contacted him. He had numerous opportunities to do so. As I've said, he has this hereditary medical condition which TBS really needed to know about, which wasn't passed on. It appears that it was simply to defend the golden rule, because if he got in contact, there was a danger that he would expose the unit in some way.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, that's how deep it went, really. Even flesh and blood wasn't enough to break that.
Yeah, it's really shocking. It's inhuman. But as we know, governments throughout the world systematically act in inhuman ways. You know, poverty is inhuman, wars are inhuman, environmental crisis is inhuman. How can anybody knowingly cause so much damage? And the thing is, they're all cogs in the machine. You know, their humanity is left at the door as soon as they put on the uniform or, you know, join a hierarchy. And, you know, but the positive thing is that this actually also throws a spotlight on all the movements that they targeted, the movements to try and get justice for people killed in police custody, you know, to protect the environment, to advance, you know, workers' rights, whatever it is. You know, these movements are strong, powerful movements, and at the end of the day, you know, we're unstoppable. Whatever tactics they use, you know,
revolutionary optimism, comrade.
Well, it's not just about optimism. It's just the reality is that people are more powerful than governments and corporations and, you know, whatever they can throw at us, if only we realized how much power we've got. And I think the lesson of this inquiry shows that how much power we do have. It's the campaign, it's the women like Helen who track down their ex-partners. It's the campaigners who exposed, you know, this unit and demanded a public inquiry. It's the Lawrence family who would not accept, you know, the murder of their son and the way the police basically covered it up. We are powerful, and you know, the message coming out of this inquiry is, you know, it doesn't matter what they throw at you, you know, keep on campaigning and speak truth, speak the truth.
Fair play, though your voice may crack. That is the end of Bob Lambert at the Undercover Policing Inquiry. He's had 2 separate appearances, and they are now done. This afternoon, we move on to this man, the author of this book, which is a fairly terrible child's book, John Webb. John Webb was one of the back office staff. He was never an undercover officer himself. He was one of the back office staff who served under Lambert whilst Lambert was the manager of the unit. He was involved in the unit between 95 and for about 4 or 5 years. I imagine all the topics that are covered are going to be the same ones that were covered with the questioning of Lambert. It'll be interesting to see how much loyalty the 2 men have for each other. Tomorrow, we'll be hearing from Helen Steele. That will be very much a change of pace, hearing from one of the activists. One of the main reasons that this inquiry is taking place. So please do tune in for that. But yeah, this afternoon, John Webb. Don't recommend this book. Don't give it to your children. Ruby Wax wrote the foreword. Don't know what she was thinking. I mean, obviously she didn't know. But yeah, please join us this afternoon. We envisage it's going to be a late finish. We've been told it'll carry on to at least 6. So yeah, it's going to be a late one. All right, thanks for joining us, and see you all this afternoon. Please do like, share,